on Daystar and you publicly affirm their relationship as being of the Lord, can you do that in good conscience without having talking to Lisa to get her side of the story?
I don't care. The great thing about being my age is I just don't care. I've got a good quality of life.
What really happened behind the scenes when Joni Lamb and Jimmy Evans' alliance fell apart? Once a respected marriage mentor, Jimmy Evans faced a shocking ministry meltdown that left many wondering, how did things spiral so fast? Dive into the untold story of power, betrayal, and the collapse of a once promising partnership. This is a cautionary tale you won't want to miss. Jimmy Evans was once a widely respected figure in Christian marriage ministry. As the founder of XO Marriage, he had built a reputation for offering solid guidance on love, commitment, and biblical relationships. People trusted him to speak wisely about marriage and family. But things changed dramatically when Joni Lamb, the widow of Daystar's founder Marcus Lamb, decided to marry Dr. Doug. This relationship was controversial from the start, raising eyebrows in many circles because of Doug's background and the timing so soon after Marcus's death. Despite the concerns coming from Joni's own family and others in the Christian community, Jimmy Evans stepped in to publicly support Joni's decision to marry Doug. He didn't just offer quiet backing, he went further by pushing the narrative that Joni's marriage was of the Lord. In fact, in a leaked 2023 meeting, Jimmy even called Joni the voice of God within her family. This wasn't just a casual endorsement. He demanded that Joni's son Jonathan Lamb and his wife Susie submit to her authority. This call for submission meant that Joni's decisions were to be accepted without question, as if she was speaking directly for God. This position caused a deep division within the Lamb family. Jonathan and Susie opposed the marriage, questioning Doug Weiss's previous divorce and whether Joni's quick move to remarry aligned with biblical principles. But Jimmy Evans sided firmly with Joni. Instead of mediating or seeking unity, he applied pressure, intensifying the family's conflict. His loyalty to Joni led him to back decisions that many believed contradicted the very teachings he once preached about marriage and holiness. Jimmy's role in this situation led to a fracture not only within the family but also in his own ministry reputation. The man who had once counseled thousands on healthy marriages was now defending a relationship that many Christians viewed as deeply problematic. His public support of Joni's controversial marriage alienated supporters and raised questions about his integrity as a spiritual leader. Eventually, Jimmy stepped away from his role in marriage ministry, shifting his focus to teaching on end-times prophecy. While this seemed like a career change, many saw it as an attempt to distance himself from the fallout of backing Joni's marriage. His fall from grace was marked by accusations of spiritual abuse, manipulation, and a loss of credibility among the Christian community. The unwavering support Jimmy gave Joni Lamb's controversial marriage was a pivotal moment that reshaped his ministry and altered the public's perception of him forever.
Being bold to speak the truth and to not be a part of a cover-up, and that's led us to where we are now completely free, not attached to any sort of major institution or any type of control, to where we're able to be a voice for truth and to be able to stand up against injustice and be a voice for others out there who are have been through abuse or been through a difficulty or been part of a culture that encourages people to cover things up. We're so excited that we can help be a force that can shine the light on the darkness and allow the Lord to do a cleansing work in the body of Christ. So thank you all for all the people that have written to us and supported us and loved on us. It's really just been so overwhelming.
The Lamb family, once seen as a shining example of Christian unity and strong family values, has become the center of a storm marked by deep conflict and troubling allegations. At the heart of this turmoil lies the complicated and painful rift caused by Joni Lamb's controversial decisions, especially her marriage to Doug Weiss, a relationship that many family members and outsiders view with skepticism and concern. This conflict has not only divided the family, but has also spilled into the public eye, raising serious questions about spiritual leadership, accountability, and abuse. The tension within the family grew steadily after Marcus Lamb's death. While Marcus and Joni had been the faces of Daystar, a major Christian television network they built together, the sudden loss of Marcus left a void, not only in leadership but in the family's emotional core. Joni's quick decision to marry Doug Weiss, a man with a controversial background and a history of divorce, struck a nerve with her children and close associates. Many felt that the timing was inappropriate, and that this new relationship did not honor the memory of Marcus, or the values the family had long preached. Rebeccalamb Weiss, Joni's youngest daughter, was one of the most vocal critics of her mother's choices. She openly opposed the relationship, voicing her concerns about how it affected the family and their ministry's reputation. Rebecca's boldness led to sharp confrontations with Joni, where emotions ran high and words were exchanged that revealed deep wounds and fractures in their relationship. Yet, despite Rebecca's efforts to hold her mother accountable, Joni seemed determined to move forward, often dismissing the objections of her children and surrounding herself with people who supported her decisions unquestioningly. The situation escalated when allegations of spiritual abuse emerged from within the family. Jonathan Lamb, Joni's son, and his wife Susie publicly accused Joni and others in leadership of using their spiritual authority to manipulate and silence dissenting voices in the family. They described a culture where opposing Joni's marriage or leadership was met not with understanding or dialogue, but with accusations of demonic influence and curses. This kind of spiritual intimidation created an environment of fear and division rather than healing and unity.
Your concern is to do what she says, and if you can't be here.
No, it is my concern.
No, Jonathan, you keep arguing with everything. You got to stop.
I'm not arguing.
You're arguing with everything. You've got to stop. And it has to end with both of you acknowledging her authority. She is God's voice to you here on this property and related to Daystar Network. She is God's voice. You submit or you leave. That's really the truth.
I mean, there will be a viewer comment the next time you are on about Doug. So you either submit and read it or you leave. And there's not going to be any in between.
Adding to the turmoil were reports of deeply personal and painful issues, including claims that a family member abused Jonathan and Susie's daughter. These allegations, coupled with accusations that Joni tried to cover up the abuse, shocked many within the Christian community and beyond. The resulting backlash led to major ministries, including Joyce Meyer Ministries, severing ties with Daystar. The public learned that the family's private struggles were far more complicated and painful than anyone had imagined, casting a shadow over their once celebrated legacy. The conflict didn't stay private for long. As the family disputes became public, the media and followers of Daystar began to question not just the family's unity, but the very nature of their spiritual leadership. Joni's insistence on controlling the narrative and her unwillingness to engage openly with her children's concerns only fueled suspicions and mistrust. Many wondered if the desire for power and control had overshadowed the core Christian principles the family had preached for decades. Within the family, the fractures deepened. Jonathan and Susie, feeling unheard and marginalized, eventually left Daystar and began speaking openly about their experiences, shining a light on the toxic dynamics they endured. Their courage sparked conversations about spiritual abuse, accountability, and the dangers of unchecked leadership within Christian ministries. The Lamb family's story became a cautionary tale, illustrating how even the most respected Christian families and ministries can struggle with very human failings. The broader Christian community watched closely as these revelations unfolded. For many, it was a painful reminder that ministries and families, no matter how revered, are not immune to conflict, broken relationships, and even abuse. It raised critical questions about how spiritual authority is wielded and the importance of accountability structures to prevent manipulation and harm. Despite the chaos, many still hope for reconciliation and healing within the Lamb family. They pray that truth and humility will prevail, allowing the family to rebuild trust and restore what has been lost. Yet, the path forward remains uncertain. The damage done by years of conflict and spiritual abuse is deep, and true healing will require more than just public statements. It will demand honest repentance, open communication, and a willingness to prioritize people over power. In the end, the Lamb family's struggles reflect a larger issue faced by many Christian ministries today: how to balance leadership and authority with grace, transparency, and accountability. Their story challenges believers to examine not only the public personas of their leaders, but also the hidden dynamics behind closed doors. It serves as a powerful call to the church to protect the vulnerable, confront abuse, and uphold the values of love and truth in every sphere of ministry. Jimmy Evans was once a respected figure in the world of Christian ministry, known for his teachings on marriage, relationships, and faith. As the founder of ExoMarriage and a prominent marriage mentor, he had built a reputation as a voice of wisdom and encouragement, helping countless couples strengthen their bonds through biblical principles. For many years, his sermons and advice were seen as a beacon for those seeking to live out God's design for marriage, and he held a respected place within the Christian community. However, over time, Jimmy Evans's ministry faced a dramatic and troubling decline. This collapse wasn't just a quiet fading from the spotlight. It was marked by growing controversy, public disputes, and theological missteps that seriously damaged his credibility. One of the key moments in this downward spiral was his outspoken support for Joni Lamb's controversial marriage to Doug Weiss, a union that many within the Christian community questioned due to Doug's background and the timing of their relationship. Jimmy Evans publicly affirmed Joni and Doug's marriage as of the Lord, despite never consulting Doug's ex-wife Lisa or considering her perspective. This dismissal of Lisa's side not only showed a lack of pastoral sensitivity, but also revealed a troubling pattern of loyalty over truth. His defense of the marriage, especially in light of the concerns raised by Joni's own children, alienated many of his followers and cast doubt on his judgment as a spiritual leader. The refusal to engage with opposing voices was seen by many as a betrayal of the very biblical principles he once championed. Further complicating matters were leaked recordings and insider reports revealing that Jimmy Evans had urged Joni's children to submit to her authority as the voice of God in their family, a claim that raised eyebrows and sparked accusations of spiritual abuse. This demand for submission was used to silence dissent and justified harsh treatment of family members who questioned Joni's decisions. Such behavior conflicted sharply with the message of grace and mutual respect that should characterize Christian leadership, leading to growing unease and criticism from the wider Christian community. As tensions escalated, Jonathan and Susie Lamb, Joni's son and daughter-in-law, stepped forward with public accusations of spiritual abuse within the family. They described a toxic environment where questioning leadership was met with threats, curses, and manipulation. These revelations brought an intense spotlight on Jimmy Evans and Daystar Network, prompting some prominent ministries, including Joyce Meyer Ministries, to sever their ties with Daystar. The fallout was swift and severe, shaking the foundation of the ministry and leaving many supporters disillusioned. Jimmy Evans' theological credibility took a significant hit when he made controversial public statements that many considered heretical. One such instance was his claim that Jesus Christ was wrong for refusing to submit to his mother Mary. This statement shocked many believers, as it directly challenged the deity and sinlessness of Christ, a core doctrine in Christianity. The theological outrage that followed further isolated Jimmy within the Christian community and deepened the crisis in his ministry. In response to the mounting criticism and internal turmoil, Jimmy Evans quietly stepped away from the marriage ministry that had made him famous and shifted his focus to end-time prophecy teachings. This pivot was met with skepticism by many, who saw it as an attempt to distance himself from the controversy and salvage what remained of his ministry. His new show, End Times, replaced another prophecy program on Daystar's schedule, a move critics labeled opportunistic and self-serving, further eroding trust in his leadership. Behind the scenes, the damage to Jimmy Evans' reputation was profound. Once seen as a trustworthy counselor and spiritual guide, he was now associated with manipulation, cover-ups, and doctrinal errors. His close alliance with Joni Lamb during a period of family and ministry upheaval was viewed as a betrayal of his calling. Instead of standing for truth and accountability, he appeared to prioritize loyalty to friends and power structures, contributing to the breakdown of trust within the Daystar community. The collapse of Jimmy Evans' ministry serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of compromising spiritual integrity for personal gain or alliances. It highlights how easily a respected ministry can unravel when leaders choose loyalty over truth and silence dissent rather than addressing concerns with humility. His story is a reminder that leadership in the church demands more than charisma and popularity. It requires steadfast commitment to biblical truth, accountability, and genuine care for those being led. For many who once looked up to Jimmy Evans, his fall has been heartbreaking. It calls attention to the importance of holding leaders accountable and the need for transparency in ministry. The repercussions of his choices continue to ripple through the Christian community, prompting reflection on how ministries handle conflict, power, and the pressures of public life. In the end, Jimmy Evans' ministry collapse and theological controversies are not just about one man's failure. They reflect broader challenges facing the church today: how to maintain faithfulness in leadership amid human weaknesses, how to protect the vulnerable from spiritual abuse, and how to ensure that ministries remain true to their calling in a complex and often unforgiving world. The hope remains that lessons can be learned, healing can occur, and the church can emerge stronger and more vigilant for the sake of its mission. The story surrounding the collapse of Jimmy Evans' ministry and the controversies involving Joni Lamb's leadership at Daystar goes far beyond just a family or organizational dispute. It raises critical questions about loyalty, integrity, and leadership failures that resonate across Christian ministries and, in fact, any organization where trust and accountability should be paramount. At the heart of the matter is the tension between loyalty to individuals and loyalty to truth. When leaders prioritize protecting their friends or preserving their own power over speaking honestly and addressing wrongdoing, it creates a toxic environment. This kind of loyalty isn't healthy or biblical, it's blind allegiance that can lead to cover-ups and silence serious concerns. Jimmy Evans' actions exemplify this. Rather than engaging with the legitimate concerns raised by Joni Lamb's children and others about her controversial marriage and leadership style, he chose to support her unconditionally. This choice cost him dearly, not just his reputation but also the integrity of his entire ministry. Integrity is often talked about in ministry circles, but it is more than just a buzzword. It means living and leading in a way that is transparent, consistent, and accountable. Unfortunately, the Daystar situation revealed a glaring lack of integrity. Decisions were made behind closed doors, dissenting voices were silenced, and public images were carefully managed to hide the fractures beneath. The use of non-disclosure agreements to silence family members like Rebecca is a particularly stark example of how image control was prioritized over truth and reconciliation. This approach not only damages personal relationships, but also undermines the trust of the wider community that looks up to these leaders. Leadership failures in this story show how power can be misused when accountability is absent. Joni Lamb's consolidation of control, combined with Jimmy Evans' support, created an atmosphere where decisions could be pushed through without genuine consultation or concern for others. When leaders surround themselves with yes men and discourage honest feedback, they risk steering their organizations and families toward disaster. This is a classic warning in leadership. Those who refuse to listen to constructive criticism often lead themselves into crisis. The spiritual implications are profound. Christian leadership carries a responsibility not only to manage an organization, but also to model Christ-like behavior. When leaders prioritize loyalty over truth or manipulate situations to protect their image, it contradicts the humility and servant-heartedness Jesus taught. The theological missteps, such as Evans' controversial statements about Jesus and Mary, further illustrate how deeply leadership failures can affect spiritual health. These are not merely mistakes in judgment, they are signs that the leader has drifted far from biblical foundations. On a broader scale, these failures impact the entire Christian community connected to Daystar and beyond. Followers who once trusted the ministry are left confused, hurt, and disillusioned. When scandals erupt in prominent ministries, it shakes faith in leadership everywhere. People begin to question not only those directly involved, but also the systems and structures that allowed such failures to happen unchecked. This ripple effect can lead to skepticism and disengagement in the church, which is devastating for its mission. The story also highlights the importance of transparency and accountability in leadership. Healthy organizations foster open communication, encourage questions, and create safe spaces for concerns to be raised without fear of retaliation. Sadly, the opposite was true in this case. The use of contracts and payments to buy silence, as seen with Rebecca Lamb, shows a willingness to avoid difficult conversations and ignore painful truths. This short-term solution only delays inevitable exposure and deepens the eventual fallout. Moreover, the Daystar saga invites reflection on how leaders handle personal relationships in the public eye. Joni Lamb's quick remarriage and the controversial rise of Doug Weiss stirred emotions and suspicions that were compounded by poor communication and lack of openness. Leaders who hold public trust must recognize that their personal decisions have broader consequences. When these decisions contradict the values they preach, they lose moral authority and alienate supporters. One cannot overlook the role that money played in these failures. Financial resources can be a blessing, but they also carry the potential for misuse. The story reveals how money was used to maintain power, silence critics, and manipulate public perception. This transactional approach to leadership is incompatible with the servant leadership model Jesus exemplified. Instead of building community and fostering healing, It creates walls, divisions, and distrust. The broader implications also challenge Christian communities to reconsider how they respond to leadership failures. It's tempting to look away or dismiss difficult truths to preserve unity, but doing so only enables ongoing harm. The church is called to hold leaders accountable in love, seeking restoration and truth. Ignoring problems under the guise of loyalty or fear of scandal ultimately damages the body of Christ. Finally, this story is a sobering reminder that leadership is a high calling with serious consequences. Leaders must prioritize truth over convenience, integrity over image, and humility over control. They must be willing to face hard questions, accept correction, and place the well-being of their communities above personal gain. The Daystar controversy shows what happens when these principles are abandoned. In the end, loyalty, integrity, and leadership are not just abstract ideals but vital components that determine whether a ministry thrives or collapses. The lessons from this story should inspire all who lead or follow in Christian communities to recommit themselves to honest, accountable, and humble leadership. Only then can trust be rebuilt, healing occur, and ministries fulfill their true purpose in the light of God's truth.